everybody. It's Recotopia, episode 105, and today we're going to be doing the year in film 2023 live before the Oscars. But then when you listen to this, like you get your regular person out there that gets our podcast, it's going to come after the Oscars. So we have no idea what's going to win in the Oscar race, but we are doing our own 2023 year in film. I'm joined by Aaron Dicer.
Highly ho, Cinerinos.
He's the guy who's seen everything. And I'm also joined by Jeremy Scott.
That's me, the guy who's seen the fewest.
Yeah, that's true. And I am Chris Atkins, and I have seen the middlest. Once again, welcome, chat. We're going to get right into it, but we're going to have a 5-minute intermission after about an hour or so of talking. And then we'll get back into the remainder of our list. And Aaron is going to be staying to talk about movies we did.
Oh, yeah. Every year we try to get through as many as we can. We always end up in the 60 to 70 range of movies we talk about. And there were a lot more movies than that came out. What I did last year, I'll do it again this year. If you want to stick around afterwards and throw out movies we didn't get to, I'll be more than happy to chat about those after the show is over with the live viewers for a little bit. So yeah, we'll do that again.
Nice.
All right. Well, I think it's only fitting to start off the year with the two movies that basically ruled everybody's discussion. And that is Barbie and Oppenheimer. Let's talk about Barbie, which was the #1 movie, not only domestically, but worldwide. Made $1.4 billion worldwide. Made more money worldwide than it made domestically, believe it or not. Aside from the United States. What did we think about this? What did we think about Barbie?
Well, I tweeted, I came to Barbie late. I missed the big event. I did not do the doubleheader. I did not see either of these films in the theater. And I think Barbie, as I tweeted, is about 3 or 4 moments of sheer brilliance. And then some comedy that doesn't work as well for me. I don't need any of the Will Ferrell stuff. And I feel like we've gone to a point now where you shouldn't even cast Will Ferrell in this role. And I wouldn't need any of that side story, regardless of who it was. But once it was Will Ferrell, I was like, I just checked out. I was like, I don't care. He's done this before. I've seen him do this a million times. Ryan Gosling is really good. Margot Robbie is really good. America Ferrera is really good. It's overall, I like it. I did not love it, but I respect it, and I didn't think it was bad in any parts. It just didn't work for me the whole way through.
I would like to reflect the comments from the gentleman from Tennessee. It pretty much said everything that I would say. I would just add the Will Ferrell stuff doesn't work because it's the stuff that's almost the antithesis to what the movie is.
Yes,
like the stuff that he's doing is so much more corporate than anything else because it's the Mattel stuff. And the whole Mattel part of this is just the biggest cognitive dissonance in the entire movie. It's just like, you want to have the cake of, taking down Barbie and saying, okay, here's how, where Barbie has changed how women perceive themselves and, what does it mean to be a woman actually? And Greta's doing this all really, really well. But then Mattel's in the background going, hey, also, we're going to sell all of the stuff in this movie. We're going to make so much money off of this movie. And so the jokes about, the Casa, whatever, Ryan Gosling's dream house, being sold by Mattel in the movie, and that's a big joke. But they're selling it. They're actually selling. It's not a joke. It's happening for real. So, there's a weird cognitive dissonance. But I love the movie. I think Greta Gerwig is just astonishingly talented.
I think it was Jonathan, said the other day, she's made 3 movies and they've all been nominated for Best Picture. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I don't have much else to add to what you guys are saying. I just know that I knew this was going to be a big hit because I was sitting next to my girlfriend and I was also sitting next to and behind somebody who was crying at the end of this movie. And so am I frozen? I don't know. I keep seeing freezing
Your
going on,
voice
so I'm
is-
hoping that I'm
No,
not.
you're doing fine. You have a little bit of lag, but you're all right.
Okay. All right. But I thought I knew this was going to be big when I saw it with the audience that I saw with. So, so I thought this was amazing. The next one would be Oppenheimer. These two movies are going to be linked forever because they came out on the same day, and you know, the whole Barbenheimer thing. I got caught up in it. I watched both of these movies in theaters. I saw Oppenheimer twice in theaters, I really do think that Oppenheimer is a huge achievement. It's hard to make biopics that are this good and interesting and keep your attention throughout. And it's a 3-hour movie too. So
Yeah.
I'm definitely frozen, aren't I? You guys are not reacting. I can't see you guys reacting.
We just didn't react. We both just paused for a second.
Okay, I'm having trouble here. So anyway,
no worries. Oppenheimer is, for me, succeeds on just a story level alone. Like, it's just a movie that grabbed me through the entire thing. I was really interested to see the portrayal of this man. But then you get to the visual stuff that Nolan's doing and the stuff he's doing with conceptually with the ideas of fission and fusion and the ideas of an internal, implosion versus an external explosion and how those are impacting the characters. I think it's brilliant filmmaking, and I really enjoyed it.
I will say it's too long. If you love a movie enough, you're never going to mind that it's 3 hours long. But if you merely really like a movie, you're going to feel that 3 hours. I will say the test scene near the end where they finally get to doing the thing that you're waiting for to do the whole movie, that is some of the most incredible tension building that I've seen in any film. And I watched it on a tiny ass screen in my office, but I had goosebumps. And I think it's probably the pinnacle of what Nolan has been building towards filmmaking wise. Yeah, it's great. The performances and that tension building scene at the end are really what make it for me. I do think it's a little too long.
all right. I'm going to continue with some box office stuff. Barbie and Oppenheimer both were in the top 10 domestically. I'm going to talk about a few that were in the top 10 domestically and some of them worldwide as well that were not in the comic book category. And surprisingly enough, 5 movies this year were not comic book movies that made the domestic top 10. And there was a chance for it to be dominated by comic book movies, but it was not. And we'll get into that in a moment. But another huge hit early in the year, Super Mario Brothers. I know, sigh, but you know what? I think they made probably the perfect video game adaptation out of this.
I mean, yes, I suppose. Visually, I think it's incredible. And I think that's what disappointed me when I saw it, is that it felt like just fan service. And maybe that's what they wanted to do. It made over $1 billion. So maybe that was a smart decision. They didn't make this movie for Jeremy. And that's okay. Jeremy did not enjoy this movie. So there you go.
Yeah, it's Fruit Loops, man. Like you can enjoy Fruit Loops as an adult, but you just don't want to, live your life on it, and it feels empty, and you don't feel like you've been fed, and like it's still beautiful and it tastes really good. And when I was sitting in the theater with, there were kids on either side of me, and they were having the time of their life, man. Like seeing this stuff on the screen, and the movie is just funny enough. Like there's some good laughs in it. It's not a great movie as we would consider like a great film, but it's Fruit Loops, man. It's a good every once in a while have a bowl of Fruit Loops.
Yeah. Another surprise top 10. Well, this was a super surprise for me for that it would make the top 10 this year is Wonka. I did not expect, especially with the trailers that had come out on this movie and all the discussion around the movie before it even came out. it seemed like it was destined to be like a Cats or something like that. It was going to come out in the holidays, and people were just going to make fun of it and not go watch it and everything. But this movie has ended up actually doing extremely well. And I believe I think not only top 10 domestic, but also top 10 worldwide. Yeah, number 7 worldwide. I personally didn't like this movie too much, but I think there's a lot of people who are digging it. I think the songs in this are not very good, or they didn't really appeal to me all that much. And I think it's one of those, it's perfectly fine. I don't understand why it's been a big hit, but to each his own.
I think, all hail the king. This is Paul King, and like Paddington and Paddington 2 remain some of my favorite movies of all time. He has a way of reaching what I find valuable about these kind of messages, and there's something really wholesome and amazing about what he's doing with Wonka here, and almost devastating when you take like the idea of this Wonka and then translate it to the Gene Wilder Wonka later. You get a much deeper sense of how sad that pessimism is from the older Wonka because of the optimism of this younger Wonka. I think Timothée Chalamet is great. I did enjoy the music. I loved this movie. I had a really good time.
I don't think we should underestimate the box office draw power of Timothée Chalamet with a certain generation.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
I have not seen this film. I can't weigh in.
The other movie that was not comic book related that made the top 10 domestic top 10 was John Wick 4. And I thought this was an interesting one. We all saw this during Sin Week last year. And it felt like we all loved it, but we didn't like a lot of the movie too. There were some parts of it that we were like, come on. And this is another one. I don't know what it is, Aaron. I don't know if you've heard anything. What is it about movies that have to be 3 hours long these days? What is it? Is it sort of the, we want to make sure people are getting the bang for their buck post COVID and blah, 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 and all that. It used to be, if you were a business person in the film industry, you would be like, I want to make this movie an hour and a half. Not, you don't want to cut it too much, but I want to make this movie an hour and a half so I can get as many show times as I can.
Right. Turn it over, baby. Yeah.
And whatever. Now they're just like, here's 3 hours. We'll just put everything in now.
I don't have an answer to that question. I do think it will shift back. I think you're starting to see it with some movies that are hitting 90, even some action films recently. But I think it's a doff of the cap to the artist, to the filmmaker, because a lot of the reasons movies ended up at 90, like you said, is because of the business people going, we got to cut this to 90, we got to turn it over. It was studio notes, it was production notes that were cutting things down. The artist wants to build, and a lot of times it's the editing process from above. And I think we are a little more lenient with our directors now. The studios seem to be giving them a lot more leniency to make longer movies, and so of course they are. Of course they're going to make this 3 hours.
Your John Wick 3 makes as much money as it does, then you tend to go John Wick 4. I'll look at the receipts. You do what you want. Like, yeah, I do think they've been giving rope. Like, I understand how Scorsese can make a 3 hour movie because he is who he is. I understand how Nolan can do that. But it is weird that the John Wick guy is given that much rope, because there's a lot of fat in John Wick 4 for all that's amazing about it. Now, I will say the top-down shotgun scene in the abandoned house is one of the best action sequences I think I've ever seen. And that is the standout of this whole movie for me, is that scene right there, because it felt like a video game, but also felt like I was there. It's weird.
I really enjoyed the movie. I thought there were some parts that lasted too long, like the stairway scene and stuff like that. But I really was kind of hoping also that Donnie Yen would be able to do a little bit more with his hearing and everything. There's one great scene in there, and then I feel like the rest of it just kind of doesn't use.
He's magic after that.
Right, exactly. So anyway, I enjoyed it. It's just
He knows what cards he got dealt in poker, Chris.
I know. I know.
That scene is so dumb.
Actually, I lied. It was actually only 4 comic book movies that made the top 10, because the other one that I didn't have listed down here, the only one that both Jeremy and I haven't seen, is The Sound of Freedom, which I'm not going to watch.
Yeah.
And so Aaron, this movie was in the top 10, and I think it's mainly because it had a pay it forward system.
Correct.
Nobody had to actually go see the movie for it to make the money it did. I do think it made a bulk of that money, legitimately. But tell us a little bit about this movie and sort of the phenomenon that it had.
Plenty of people saw this movie, but you're right. The reason it landed where it landed was because people were donating to a cause, and that money would go to buy out theaters. And sometimes those theaters, would only have a few people in them because they were like, hey, free showing of this movie. But those are paid tickets that somebody else bought, right? So it was an interesting kind of. It was. Listen, I'm going to bring a reference from my CCM background, but it was like when Carmid would not sell tickets to his concerts and just take a free love offering or whatever and probably make 5 times as much, because people are donating to a cause, not buying a ticket.
It's also similar to the running joke here in Nashville is that the Cumberland River has millions and millions of CDs at the bottom of it because the country artist comes out with a new record, label buys them all themselves and throws them down at the bottom of the
river. Right. Just to get them on the list.
Yep.
The movie itself is fine. It's not a terrible movie. You can read some of the behind the scenes, and I recommend you do so if you watch this movie, as I recommend with any biopic or based on a true story movie. It's always more interesting to hear the truth. But there's some shady things with the truth of kind of what's going on here. But the movie itself, if you're just watching it as a movie, I think it's a pretty fine, interesting film about fighting that kind of sex trafficking. So, it's interesting enough.
I'm going to skip over to the Best Picture nominees. We'll talk about the comic book movies in a moment. But let's go to some of the best pictures that we have, best picture nominees we haven't talked about. We'll start off with American Fiction, which is an outstanding directorial debut from Cord Jefferson. He didn't get nominated for director, but this is his debut movie, and it's very well assured throughout, and it takes some chances. And it is also, if you saw the trailer, you thought it was going to be like, you thought it was going to be one way, but it's really more about the people in this movie, and it's more about Jeffrey Wright and his relationships with everybody else, his brother, his sister, and his love interest, and all this, and really balances this whole thing out. I thought this movie is fantastic. I'm so glad that it got a Best Picture nomination.
Yeah, I just saw this last night. Yesterday afternoon. I watched it with my wife. I stood up when it was over and I was like, that was excellent. And she was like, yeah. So I'm not sure she enjoyed it as much as I did. And yeah, the trailer is a lie. The trailer suggests it's going to be this zany comedy, fish out of water, having to pretend to be something. And there are bits of that, but it really is a lot more of a drama. And the American Fiction is less the book he's written, and it's more the life he's leading. Jeffrey Wright is outstanding in this movie. And the only reason I won't give it 100 out of 100, I'll knock it down to 99, is I'm just not sure about this ending. I feel like this ending works best if it is the zany comedy all the way through. And it ended up feeling to me like they legitimately were not sure how to end it. So they gave us 3 endings. The actual ending that they end with works very well with the book that he's written. But again, the movie isn't really about the book that he's written. It's about him. I wanted a little bit more closure for him and his relationships than the movie gave me. But it's outstanding. I loved it.
Yeah, I love this movie too. It's meta in the best way for me. And what I mean by that is what the movie is doing and showing us and the story it's giving us is not only the message of the movie, but also the message of the making of the movie and the message of who Cord Jefferson feels like he is in Hollywood. To hear him tell stories of, you know, what it means to be black and in Hollywood and making stories, and how everybody's like, yeah, how do we turn this into a black story? You know, how do we make this about slavery? How do we make this about, you know, gang violence or whatever? And so you can tell it's very personal to him. He was one of the main writers on Lindelof's Watchmen series, so you can see a lot of that there. He was also a main writer on The Good Place, and you can see, you know, some of those themes there as well. He may win the screenplay Oscar. He may. I don't think he will, but it's definitely a battle, and I think it's well deserved. I think this movie is phenomenal.
On to Anatomy of a Fall, which also earned a nomination for Justine Triet and the actress Sandra Hüller. This is one of those movies that's going to be extremely frustrating for those who want answers. It's one of those the type of things where something happens and we don't know. We are just like the detectives and the lawyers and everybody else in this movie who's trying to figure out what's going on. A lot of smoke that it could be a murder, and a lot of stuff that where you could just be misinterpreting things and it's just a guy who fell out of his barn or whatever. But it's just compelling throughout. It's very interesting how the defense goes about their defense and the prosecution goes about their prosecution. It's one of those that by the end of it, you will have no idea what actually happened, but you can have your own ideas of what happened. What did you guys think?
I think Sandra Hüller is just astonishing in this movie. Her performance is so good, and I think it drives the ability of this movie to play both of those sides and to be able to go, okay, you know, what do I believe about what's happening here? Because really what we're doing is we're just getting insight into the personal life of someone and then making assumptions based on that. I also love the French courtroom where anybody can just say anything at any time. That's amazing. And it's so fun to watch. Come for the steel drum PIMP and then stay for the amazing acting. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is one I didn't get to in time for this show, but I'm hoping to watch it before Sunday. Before the show.
It's good stuff.
On to The Holdovers, which has got nominations for Paul Giamatti and Divine Joy Randolph. I don't know, Aaron. Divine Joy Randolph is basically the favorite in her category.
Yeah, she's a lock as locks get to win that.
Giamatti is kind of a maybe.
Most people are saying it will be Murphy, Kelly Murphy. But he might win. He might.
Yeah, he may be. But The Holdovers was a surprise for me. I love Alexander Payne, but I was kind of surprised how much I loved this movie. It's again, Giamatti. I mean, hopefully, finally, I've railed against this so many times. He's only been nominated one time in his life. I'll never understand that with all the performances. And he finally gets his second nomination, like years after Cinderella Man. But I really, really enjoyed this movie. What did you guys think?
Aaron?
I love it. I think The Holdovers is so fun to watch. I think the thing that stood out to me was how brave's not the right word, but just how assured of itself this movie is, that it can start out feeling like, oh, I see what we're doing here. We're getting the gang together. We're going to meet all of these kids. We're going to have like a Dead Poets Society gang here. And then within 20 minutes, like, nope, just these two. Everybody else is leaving. And it's like, oh, okay. So the movie is so self-assured to just be able to go where the story needs it to go. And because of that, I was just really engaged in the story. And of course, that character is a really fun one to interact with all the high vocabulary insults are just so fun. So yeah. I
feel like Payne had a lot of fun writing this script.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of giving that dialogue to Giamatti. I told you guys privately that I feel like I could make a case that he's playing the same character he played in Sideways, even though he's not. Giamatti just rules. Like, I think you put somebody else in this movie and it's not quite as magical. There's something about him that's just magnetic, no matter what he's doing, no matter what he looks like. And he has the ability to feel like a real person, even when he's playing an extremely, like, well, he's a dickhead in this movie for the most part, but you still like him. It's weird, man. There's power there. But yeah, I really, really like this movie.
And a great, I think this was his first film, Dominic Sessa, his first, at least his first starring role, if not his first ever movie. A great debut for him on that. Okay, this one's going to be controversial, y'all, I'm pretty sure. Killers of the Flower Moon. I didn't like it.
Oh,
I didn't like this movie at all.
I absolutely
Aaron, tell us why we're wrong.
You're not going to get much defense from me. I think this movie is a little full of itself, and I think it comes off that way. I think this movie shows you the same thing in different times at different points in the movie. And it's like you already gave me this exposition. Like it shows you something, and then it will tell you something. And it's like, well, if you're, it's like it thought it was show and tell, not show not tell. And that makes the movie a lot longer than it needs to be. I think it's a little bloated, full of itself. However, I do love the choices Scorsese is making with how he decided eventually to present the story. I just think I think he put all the right energy into it. I just don't know that it was the project worth him putting all this energy into. He had to change so much to get it to be the movie that it needed to be.
Well, he's even said that he started writing it and then realized that he was telling a story about the white people. My understanding is DiCaprio told him that it was DiCaprio who came to him and said that. Making a movie about the white people.
Yeah, sure. I think it's much less that than it could have been. But yeah. And I think especially you look at the end, he's definitely making an effort to make it, something where he as the artist is, trying to put the attention where it needs to be.
But then you got Leonardo DiCaprio and he's the whole thing. He's the centerpiece of the whole thing.
I would say Lily Gladstone is the centerpiece of the whole thing.
Oh, not the way they made this movie. She's not.
I don't agree at all.
Yeah, like for me, if she's the main character, we should know we should see how this is affecting her throughout the whole thing. But we're seeing how it's affecting DiCaprio.
Yeah, we're following him all the way.
And I that's one thing, Aaron, I think about of this podcast. I'm going to disagree with you on the most about on this one, because I didn't get that at all. And I understand at the end of it, he's trying to do this thing like white people have been trying to tell this story, and I feel so much guilt doing the same thing. And I'm just like, dude, you could do this should have been her movie, and it's not. She's going to win the Oscar, by the way. She's going to win that, but unless Emma Stone gets this surprise.
I think it could be Emma Stone.
It could be.
But like I thought it was miscast. I thought DiCaprio should have been the detective. I think Plemons should have been the husband. There's a lot of different things I feel like, and who am I to say? Scorsese's the master, right? I'm not a director, but I feel like he made a lot of mistakes making this movie. I
am not unconvinced by what you're saying. I think what you're saying is valid, and it could have been my own focus. But you're right. Mm-hmm. The way the film is made is not doing that. So
I will say, I don't know if I've ever liked a score this much that I've also not liked. Which is to say, I think it's incredibly effective, but choose your words, Jeremy. 75% of the score in this movie is the same note. Over and over and over. Like, there's so many scenes where it's like, bow, 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 bow. And it does build the tension, but that stood out to me watching the movie, that kept coming back to this main theme that is one note over and over again.
Yeah.
All right, on to Maestro, the Bradley Cooper movie. This is a movie that's good performances and very beautiful to look at, and I think it's pretentious as shit, and I couldn't take it.
That's why I don't. I mean, people who are confused at the Bradley Cooper backlash on like Twitter, I don't understand why you're confused. Like, this is the most.
I'm confused.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think the backlash is at him as an actor. I think this movie might as well have been titled, I want to win an Oscar, God damn it.
Oh, I don't disagree. I just don't get why that's a bad thing. Like,
Make the art for making the art's sake. Don't make the art to win an award. And he started out this way. A Star is Born felt like, I want to win an Oscar as a director. I want to be the next great actor turned director.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying about doing the art for the art's sake and not the award's sake, but I think those two things are more closely related than you're allowing them to be. I think the idea of making a great Best Picture contender could be seen as, how to make a great movie. Like, that's the idea, right? That the awards award a great film. I think what it is for me is I get annoyed by the phrase try hard. I'm just like, well, what are you supposed to do? Not try hard? I am a bit of a try hard myself, I guess. Like, I want to do things to their best so that they're seen and appreciated, and that, when people see something I do, I want them to think, oh, that's good. Like, does that mean I try too hard? I don't know. Like, that phrase always gets to me. So that's the part of the backlash that I look at and I get a little annoyed by.
For the record, I don't think Chris Arias said he was a try hard.
No. I'm saying that backlash feels like
you're right.
A lot of people saying that.
I guess I'm saying when Chris said it kind of felt pretentious, I think that's what I'm saying. I didn't feel that with Oppenheimer.
That.
And yet Nolan was trying to make a Best Picture nominee, great film. But there's a tinge to Maestro that just feels like the main goal was the Oscar, and every other decision was made based on that. So
yeah, I don't feel that. I don't feel that I didn't feel that when I watched the movie. But I do want to say this every time. I also saw it in a perfect environment. I was flown out to Los Angeles to watch this movie in a perfect theater with the stars in attendance, the next day. Like, I can't see straight on this stuff. A lot of times. They
bought your vote, Aaron. They bought your vote.
Well, if it helps, I didn't vote for Maestro. So, but I did love it. But I don't know how as a human being you can rightfully separate those kind of, situation from the movie itself. I just know the music. It has been a long time, if ever, since a scene's music has made me weep. And that chapel scene made me weep. Like, there was something about him directing that at that point in his life, and the way it was done and the way it sounded, and you can see the effort on the screen. And I think that's what some people are maybe opposed to. For me, I was just like, thank you for putting all this effort into this moment where you literally conducted an actual symphony and recorded it. Like, that's astonishing stuff. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
I thought that was the best scene of the Maestro, by the way.
Yeah.
That scene. On to Past Lives, which is, I guess, kind of a surprise Best Picture nomination. I don't know. It had been talked up pretty well over the year, but I wasn't expecting it to get a Best Picture nomination. Loved this movie. It's another one of those where it talks about relationships and like what timing means for, if you're going to be a romantic partner or not, or if you're going to be friends, or if you're just going to separate forever. There's all sorts of different choices that happen in this, and Past Lives is a great movie.
Man, this movie, it doesn't look on the surface like a movie that should impact me emotionally as much as it did, but I think a lot of this is my personality. I think about this shit all the time. I think about stuff in college that I wish I had done differently, but then I'll immediately think, if I'd done that differently, I might not have met my current wife. Like, and so before this movie even came along, my mind was always playing these kind of games. What if? And so the movie comes in and does that so skillfully, and then the ending just breaks me. It just breaks me. This is one of my very favorite movies of the year.
Yeah.
Past Lives is so good. Everybody in it's so good, but just the writing on how it has determined to approach this past relationship feels so modern and fresh and open-hearted and open-minded, whereas movies for so long would treat that as, okay, the current person you're with is terrible. You should leave them for this person, or vice versa. Like you're being seduced away from your right person for the wrong person. And this movie goes, let's not talk about right people and wrong people. Let's talk about people. Let's talk about what it means to be human and what it means to love and how different parts of our life look different than others. And man, that walk back to the house and them embracing, you're right, man. It's one of the best moments in movies this year. It's so powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. On to something completely different, and that is Poor Things. Yorgos Lanthimos makes probably maybe the most oddball movie of the year. I loved Poor Things. I laughed my ass off mostly through this movie. I do think Emma Stone is deserving of the nomination for performance, and Mark Ruffalo especially too is fantastic in this. Yorgos Lanthimos generally puts a smile on my face. There's a couple of movies that I could do without, Killing of a Sacred Deer, but there's most of the time he makes movies that are just so oddball and original. I'm just enraptured in it and everything. So what did you guys think?
Aaron, go first.
I will do so. I love Poor Things. I think Yorgos is more hit and miss for me, mostly miss until The Favorite. Actually, The Favorite was the first of his that I really felt on board with, and it's continuing. Poor Things I really like, and I think the reason for me is I'm able to find some real depth in this movie that I haven't been able to find in his other movies. I understand what they've been trying to say, but for me, it all felt very surface level to my own experience. Poor Things talks about humanity in a way that I think is really interesting because of the way he strips away, literally, the ideas of sexuality, nudity, like these things. He makes it so much in your face that it just becomes a natural part of what it means to be. We all have naked bodies. Like that's just a normal thing. It loses its lasciviousness a little bit, the way that they approach this. And what it allows for us is to understand sexuality and humanity and all these different things in a more practical sense rather than, without the, part of it. It allows us to get past that and to go, okay, what is he saying here about those things and how they relate to the rest of humanity and that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Prove your point. There's a moment in this where Emma Stone is completely naked, but you are probably not going to be looking at that because of the scene going on. Like, what is this sex act that this guy has paid for in this scene?
Right.
Like, it's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. But yeah, man, this movie. What did you think about it? Did you see Poor Things, Jeremy?
I saw Poor Things. This is the first Yorgos movie that I can say I landed on the positive side with. I don't know how many viewings it will take for me to see all that stuff Aaron sees.
Sure.
Because I just saw it as a comedy. I laughed a lot.
It's a great comedy.
And that was just sort of how it played for me. And it's very clearly trying to say a lot more than just making me laugh. But I didn't walk away from that wanting to have deep conversations about humanity or what have you. I walked away from that going, that was really funny. And I've never seen so much sex and nudity that did not present as sexy.
Yeah, right. On to another complete. Can we do 180s twice and not be back in the same place as we were? The Zone of Interest is a movie that basically goes over the horror of the Holocaust without showing anything of the Holocaust. It just shows you a different side of evil in this. One of the best endings of the year I have seen in the movies this year, just because of how artistically done it is and how you can interpret it and everything. But The Zone of Interest is one of those movies where you're just going to your jaw's going to drop at the fact that people can just live next to Auschwitz and just be like, we're just going to school every day and we're just living our lives and no big deal and everything. How effective was that for you, Aaron?
Extremely, extremely effective. I think the magic of this movie is to put you in the perspective of someone who has completely dehumanized another group of people. This is something that in our current culture, in our current place in the cycle of history, that we are moving towards polarization. We're moving towards seeing each other as monsters, seeing each other as not human, seeing each other as enemies. And the end result of that is that you have a pool party next to an incineration camp. Like that's that is the end result of dehumanization. And this movie, just time after time after time throughout, you just you are struck by the power and sneakiness of rationalization and evil, and how we get there. So yeah, I think it's really powerful.
I missed this. It's on my list. I hope to get it before the Oscars. I'm actually dying to watch this one. So
yeah.
I'm going to move on to the comic book movies now, and we're going to sort of group them all together because I feel like this is a category of that. This is obviously the movies that have been making all the money up until this year, where they kind of fell off.
Big time.
And so I want to go with Marvel, and I know that Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is not a part of the MCU, but we'll go into that. The 4 movies from Marvel this year. I thought Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was really good. I think it was the best one of the bunch. Spider-Man Across the Universe was right there with it, although the discussion about how Phil Lord and Christopher Miller treat their animators has been kind of a bad sore spot for me when I hear about this.
Sure.
And then you have 2 movies like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and The Marvels, which completely failed. I think not for the reasons the trolls would have you come out and say, but I didn't like those 2 at all. And of course, Ant-Man and the Wasp has its own baggage that it didn't ask for with Jonathan Majors. We're going to get into a lot with the DCEU as well, but what's going on with comic book movies, do you think? And is it something that we're going to need to take a break from, or are they just going to keep coming out with this until they just run it into the ground and we're not interested anymore, and they're going to have to reboot them at some point?
They're still planning bigger. They're still planning Fantastic Four, X-Men. They're still planning to grow the MCU bigger and bigger and bigger. There was a headline 2 days ago that said for the next Tom Holland Spider-Man movie, Sony wants a street-level Spider-Man, but Marvel is pushing for a multiverse movie. So I don't think they're slowing. I think they're going to need 10, 15 flops before they think, maybe we're not doing the right thing. But I think it's pretty telling that of the movies you mentioned, the best one was directed by a veteran of comic book movies, James Gunn. And Quantumania was just a fucking mess, man. That was just a mess. At least the Marvels had Iman Vellani. I think that's how you say her name. I think she's delightful, but that movie's kind of a mess too. But like you said, Chris, I think not in this session, but you said something to me about how the Marvels was one of the first MCU films that you felt like you actually had to have seen all the TV shows right when the movie starts. They just throw Miss Marvel in there, and if you haven't seen that show, you don't even know who the hell she is.
Yeah. Luckily, I had seen one of them, but I had not seen Miss Marvel before this. And so the movie, The Marvel, starts off with this whole thing where I was like, wait a minute, am I supposed to know this character?
Yeah.
And I completely that this was a show. I had forgotten completely until like about 10 minutes in. I was like, oh, that's right. There was a whole show for this character. I didn't realize that. And so that took me a bit. And then I thought the story itself really threw me off for a while too. And I felt like there wasn't much heart put into it overall. So yeah, that's what I think. That's all I got to say about that.
I echo most of what you guys have said. Guardians is for me the best of the 4 that you mentioned. I think it's really fun. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is beautiful, and I hope eventually will be a great movie, but it stopped halfway through. It's a half movie.
That's the other trend, the 3-hour movie trend, and the cut my movie halfway off and make you wait a year for the next part trend. I'm done with both.
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania is, to me, just a mind-baffling decision to make this an Ant-Man movie. It takes everything that was wonderful about the Ant-Man movies and puts it in a place where you can't do those things. Like, if you're in the quantum realm, the idea of something giant or small means nothing. It means nothing to me. I don't have anything. The beauty of like the original Ant-Man was like the toy train set and like things you could recognize and going, oh, he's tiny and he's on this thing. And like you look at these characters, you don't even know if they're small or big because it's just green screen, whatever behind them. Not only that, you take away some of the funnest characters from the Ant-Man movie. You take Ant-Man, what makes him away, in this movie. Like, it's just a weird choices all around. And I think they were made because they thought they were going to the Kang thing. And that's what they were trying to do. I like the Marvels a little more than you guys, but mostly because I just like some of the scenes. I think the ending is a mess to the Marvels. I think it's really chopped up. It seems clear to me that there was a different intention with this at one point that had to be changed. And so the ending is very abrupt and anticlimactic. But I do enjoy some of the scenes in the Marvels, and I do enjoy Iman Vellani. I think she's absolutely amazing.
Let's move on to the steaming pile of shit that is the DCEU. They came out with 4 movies this year, and all 4 of them suck, I think. Now, all 4, I mean, I maybe out of this group, The Flash is the best one.
No.
What do you think is the best one out of this pile of trash?
Blue Beetle's the best of these 4.
Oh, boy, I hated Blue Beetle a lot.
Blue Beetle is just paint
none
by
of them
numbers.
are great, but Blue Beetle at least makes an effort to be a little bit more than these others, and also has, I think, a star who is a star. I think the kid in Blue Beetle's awesome.
You know what, though? I will say this about Blue Beetle. If it's not for Susan Sarandon and her whole story in that thing,
Man,
Blue Beetle might be a good movie.
She's so terrible in that movie.
Yeah. So Shazam! Fury of the Gods did not do anything. The Flash was supremely hyped and did not deliver, but that's maybe because of Ezra Miller. Who knows? I mean, I don't know what the deal is with some of these movies. They don't make and then Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, a lot of that is Amber Heard, but you can't blame Amber Heard for Aquaman failing and everything. So like, oh my God, Aquaman is one of the most tedious movies I have ever seen in my life. And the first one was pretty tedious.
Yes,
They've made it where these things were like, everything is about going on a quest to go. It's a side quest. It's a continuous side quest to go find artifacts and things. I don't find these interesting anymore at all. And not only is the hero having to go through quests, the fucking antagonist has to go through quests in this movie. And so, like, I just found all of that tedious. I will give you Blue Beetle to a point until Susan Sarandon shows up.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
But like everything in this, what is going on with DCEU? Or is it just the fact that we hate the people that they've cast, or is it because the movies suck? Which I'm always going to go to that. I'm going to say that the movies suck.
That's the reason why. Yeah, they do.
They were not good movies this year, but they also shot themselves in the foot when they said, "Okay, we're going to reboot after these 4 movies." And so then I think they lost a lot of people's interest in those 4 movies, knowing that they're meaningless now.
Right, exactly.
Lame ducks. They're lame duck movies. They have no power or interest. Yeah.
Yep.
Since we are talking about box office disappointments, I'm going to go to a section of movies here that they were all based on existing IP. They've done tremendous in the past, but some of these franchises are so old, and I think of these franchises now not so much in terms of what number movie it is, but I'm always want to call them seasons. Like this is like Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning is the 7th season of Mission Impossible. And Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is the 5th season of Hunger Games. You know, it's that type of thing. Like these movies, okay, I want to rattle them off. These are all basically disappointments, though some of them hit the top 10 worldwide and even domestically. Little Mermaid was a top 10 movie, I believe, both domestic and worldwide. But I don't think Disney is happy with the amount of money it made. It was like $500 million worldwide, and it probably cost $200 to even make this thing. So I don't think they're happy with that. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, I thought that was a terrible movie. I didn't like that at all. That one failed pretty much. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, I hate to say it, was underwhelming. I watched this just with as much excitement as I've had the last few Mission Impossibles, and I feel like now they're starting to tread water a little bit. The Hunger Games, A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, does this like prequel thing, and I'm like, again, why do you go to a movie called The Hunger Games? Do you go because you're worried about the political strife that's going on in the movie? Or do you go because you want to see people kill each other in an arena? They have not figured this out since the first movie.
Nope.
The movies after that were all pretty much political strife, and they did gangbusters, but I don't see the appeal of those type of things. Transformers, why did they even make another Transformers? I will never understand this. And then Fast X, which actually was in the top 10 worldwide. It made 700 million worldwide.
That's down though from the previous entries, isn't it? It's
extremely down. Like the Fast 9 made 700 million. They haven't made $1 billion since Fate of the Furious. So now Fast 10 was a movie that I was actually enjoying for a second there. I was like, whoa, I kind of like this Jason Momoa being the Joker type of thing through the movie and everything. And I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And then it became so Fast and the Furious after that. And I hated it, every bit of it after that. The whole scene where he's like guiding the bomb through Greece or whatever, or Rome, I was like really enjoying it. And then it kind of like, after that, I was like, okay, you lost me. So anything you want to say about these 6 movies?
I get to watch here's how I watch the Fast and Furious movies. One of these two people who's co-hosting this show with me assigns me to write sins for a Fast and Furious movie. And that is how I watch the Fast and Furious movies. And so I believe my coworkers think that it brings out an anger in me that is humorous for viewers, and they are probably correct. But yeah, these movies, I haven't enjoyed anything about these movies since the first one. I actually like the first one. I think the first one's a pretty good movie. But yeah, no, I got nothing else to say. I'd said a lot there, but it was all negative.
The important thing is to know that Christopher Nolan loves the Fast movies. That's the important thing. That's the important thing. I do like a couple of these movies. I don't love any of these movies. I think we're seeing Hollywood hopefully start to understand superhero movies aren't guarantees, sequels aren't guarantees. Like if you can get that through your head, maybe we'll see some more, original stuff and less IP driven stuff. But yeah, 2 of these movies on this list, Fast X and Mission Impossible, are also part 1s. So like here we go again with planning on 2 movies to tell one story. Now, I think Mission Impossible does it better than most part 1s. Like there's an actual objective that is met. That's the end of the movie. And then we'll find out the next objective for the next movie. Fast X is a terrible end. Like it is a complete stupid cliffhanger. Like
dude, I remember talking with you on Slack. I was halfway through the movie and I was talking about how bad it was, and we were like, wait until you find out it doesn't end. And I was no.
I was actually shocked when I got to the end of Fast 10, and I was like, huh? They just left that open at the end? They just what?
Yeah.
What?
I think what I tweeted after the end of Fast 10 was that I hope it does so poorly that they never get to make the next one, and then sometime in the future, it's just a series of great directors making Fast 11, like their version of what would have come next in the Fast universe.
I think I after watching Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and realizing the movie cost $300 million to make, I seriously wonder, are studios finally going to come to terms with the fact that they don't need to make a $300 million movie to hope that they make the $1 billion? Will they make more movies that cost less so that they can make a tinier profit, but still be like not worried, like set their whole studio on fire if this movie doesn't do well.
Right.
And we did. Jeremy knows that I railed against media back in 2005 when they were talking about box office slumps and everything. Yep. It's like the movies that were coming out were not good, but they kept coming out with these think pieces about like, well, maybe people don't like going to movie theaters anymore, or maybe there's all this other stuff. And every article was not about the movie quality themselves. And I was just dry. It drove me insane. And the same sort of thing was happening with these movies, these 6 particular movies. Oh, is nobody going to the movie theater anymore? Obviously, that's not the case because Barbie and Super Mario Brothers made $3 billion between them. So don't give me this nobody likes to go to movie theaters anymore. They didn't want to go see these movies. Give me a fucking break. So that's what it comes down to. You got to make better movies. You got to make stuff that people actually want to go see. It doesn't really have to do with a sequel being like, oh, this is an old franchise or anything. Just make a movie people want to go see. That's all that you've got to do. I know it's harder. It's easier said than done, but don't give me this bullshit and say, oh, what's wrong with people?
Yeah. Blame the audience.
Yeah, exactly. All right. I'm going to go over these next few and then we can take our 5-minute intermission.
All right.
The other Oscar nominees in acting, we can go over these pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah.
We've already gone over most of the Best Picture nominees, which also have the bulk of the acting nominees. But the ones that were kind of like just acting, Rustin, what a big year for Coleman Domingo.
Yeah.
Who was in Color Purple as well, and he was the voice of Unicron and Transformers. But Rustin is a tour de force performance for him, and I'm glad he's getting some recognition.
I wish the movie was a little better, but he is astonishing in it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have Naiad, which I had not heard of this movie until the Oscar nominations came out. I was like, what the hell is this? But Annette Bening and Jodie Foster both nominated, and I think deservedly so. I think they're very, very good in this. And this movie was a lot better than I thought it was going to be when I read the description for
Wait
it.
until you get Catch Me If You Can on it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
I did that to Jeremy, unfortunately. I really enjoyed this movie. I think this is a great movie that once you read the Wikipedia, you're like, oh.
Yep.
So I mean, the problem though is that she did this swim without having any independent observers, right?
Right.
Like she's just going out and claiming she did it, and there's nobody there to say that.
She has a history of people accusing her of exaggerating her accomplishments. Right. Yeah.
But what if someone did do this and we didn't? And the final one is The Color Purple with Danielle Brooks. Much like Wonka, I did not like the songs too much in this, and I know this is a Broadway musical. I believe it's a Broadway musical that they've made into this basically a remake. And I love the original Color Purple. I think that movie is amazing. Mm-hmm. This movie left me a little cold. I didn't really like it too much. I thought it was okay. What did you think about this?
I think Danielle Deadwyler, I think is her name. I think she's astonishing in this. And some of the singing, like Fantasia Barrino, some of the songs she does, her voice just blows me away. Yeah. But I also was a little underwhelmed overall, but I am a sucker for a Broadway musical, so I liked it.
Here's my experience with this movie. This is like Wonka, a movie that was not billed as a musical, at least where I saw. So I'm flipping channels. I see The Color Purple. I'm like, I like the original. Let's see what they've done with it. And once they burst out in song, I flipped away. Not because I hate musicals, but because I hadn't settled in for that. I had settled in for a serious drama. Mm-hmm. And it's not that the movie doesn't contain drama. I'm just saying this is what happens when you don't tell people your movie is a musical.
It's weird.
Some people are going to stop watching when you start singing. But there are enough people that love musicals. I don't understand why they're trying to bait and switch so much with this.
Mean Girls did the same thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's so weird.
All right. That's going to be our halfway point. We will come back in about 5 minutes and we'll discuss some other movies that we have not discussed thus far.
See you in 5 minutes.
All right back into it. Hope you enjoyed your break. Hope you enjoyed your pee break.
I did.
We're going to go on to the animation side, and we've already talked about Spider-Man. How about, I think, what is probably the Oscar contender for Best Animated Movie, The Boy and the Heron. Hayao Miyazaki, once again, bringing us... Is he? I mean, this guy's undefeated, it feels like.
Absolutely.
This movie's great.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. I can't comment. I'm dying to watch it.
It's Miyazaki. It's you kind of know what you're getting in that it's going to be ethereal and metaphorical, and yet there'll still be a very human core emotional story to it that you can also attach yourself to. You'll see things you've never seen in animation before. It's brilliant. I hope it wins. Yeah, I think it deserves it this year. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time you see a Miyazaki movie, you're going to see something you're just like, that's just going to fill you with joy. Like, it's just those, I don't remember what they call them, those little white balls of bouncing future babies that are just jumping around in the whole thing. Just all you're going to do is just sit there and just smile because they're so cute and so lovable and everything. And he's never afraid to be just, I don't know, his what feels like his 15-year-old self when he makes movies.
Yeah.
On to a movie that I know Jeremy is very, very happy with is Nimona. And I enjoyed this too.
I love this movie with my whole heart and even some other people's hearts. It's probably the most emotional impact I've had at a film this year. I don't think it's going to win. I would love it if it did. I think it would be totally deserving, but I think it's going to be between Boy and the Heron and Spider-Verse for the actual award. Just spoke to me. I mean, I'm not even sure. I guess the movie's target audience, as Aaron said when we first talked about this movie on this show, is anybody that's ever been othered. And I was definitely that in my life growing up. For various reasons, at various times. A lot of it was that I was the preacher's kid. And so kids would stop conversations when I walked in or would like apologize for cussing in front of me. And it always made me feel different. And this movie wants you to not feel that way. And I think greatly succeeds.
Yeah. I echo all of that. The Nimona's great. That moment, speaking of movie moments of the year, that moment standing on the sword of the giant statue and is just, it'll stay with me forever. It's just beautiful.
I also love too how our main character continually tries to ask why are you able to do this transforming stuff, and she's always like, that's not very important, don't worry about that. and everything. So I really enjoyed that too. I was surprised how much I liked Nimona.
I will say,
with all the hype,
Chloe Grace Moretz's voice work in Nimona is outstanding to the point that I had no idea it was her until after I'd seen the movie. She's great.
Yeah. On the other animated fronts, I'm going to let Aaron take it away on this because I haven't seen Elemental, I haven't seen Robot Dreams, and maybe a lot of other little animated features that you might want to bring up here in the animated category.
I'm not going to bring a ton of them up. There are at least a half a dozen others, that came out this year. I think the biggest disappointment I'll just mention in passing is Wish. Disney's big entry into animated this year. Wish was a big disappointment for them. It was almost a weird multiverse, like prequel try for them to tie all of their animation together, which it just seems doomed to me from the start. But the two I will mention as being definitely worth your time, in my opinion, are Pixar's Elemental. I think it's wild that Pixar made a great movie this year, and it's not really even in contention just because there were a couple others that were even better. But Elemental is really, really good. And Robot Dreams is good. It's kind of past lives animated style, like for dogs and robots. It's got that kind of feel to it. It's completely dialogue free. So it's all in the story. But it's beautiful and touching and says some things I wasn't expecting it to say, kind of like Past Lives. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right, and all the other animated movies sucked. On to what I'm going to consider Jeremy's list, quote unquote, movies that he wanted to talk about that otherwise wouldn't get talked about if they didn't have awards or box office behind them. Let's start off with a movie that I really loved, and that was Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Another John Francis Daley, Jonathan Goldstein of Game Night fame making this movie. It has probably my favorite, funniest moment of the year, but I'm going to let you take it away, Jeremy.
Oh, I want to hear what that is. Is it in the graves in the cemetery?
It's the part where the I can't remember who it's the guy from Bridgerton who is with them, and he's walking away on the beach, and Chris Pine is like, he's like, look at this guy. Look at him. He's like, I wonder if he's even going to go around that rock. And he just continues walking past over the rock in a straight line towards what is just water and everything. And it's just the way that scene plays out. It's my favorite scene, my favorite snippet of the year. That part.
That's awesome. Right, it is very funny. I appreciate these directors because they bring heavy humor, but actual real action in both Game Night and this movie. I don't know what this movie did box office wise to the point where whether or not they might get a sequel.
It did decently, but I don't know how it. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I read about this that was kind of funny was how it gamed the opening weekend numbers because it had so many like previews that they just basically added them all up by the time the movie came out. So when it came out, it was like, wow, it made $30 million on its opening weekend. Amazing. But it wasn't really that. It still made a shade under 100 million. So it did okay.
I know he hates acting, but I have never loved Hugh Grant more than this era of his life, playing villains in movies like this and Paddington too. So yeah, I love it.
Yep.
I will say about Dungeons and Dragons that it's great that all three of us have one of the funniest things we ever saw, and it was 3 different scenes. Because mine is when Chris Pine does a projection spell of himself singing, and then it just starts to go wrong. The effects on that and the melting of the face and awesome. It just kills me.
Further down the list, we have The Artifice Girl. We, of course, interviewed Franklin Rich last year when this movie came out. That was a very nice experience. It's weird when we get those kind of opportunities, but The Artifice Girl, among many movies that discussed the AI thing, and it went a different direction than the other AI movies, I believe. All the other AI movies were like, this is the dangers of AI. This one took a little bit more of a heady look at it, and I really appreciated like all the questions that it brings up.
Yeah, it's a thinker, man. I've seen it 3 times now, and it holds up every single time. Just one of the best directorial debuts I think I've ever seen in terms of how sure of what he's making Franklin is, and it's in my top 10 of the year, and still I think we're 3 of the only people who have seen it. I just don't think it had anywhere near the audience that it deserved. So let's shout it again. Artifice Girl's awesome.
Yeah.
It's my 2023. Hey, let me show you this movie you've never heard of. Movie. And that's the role it plays, and I love showing it to people. So yeah.
On to the this one is been nominated for Best International. It's Society of the Snow. Man, this movie's so devastating all the way through. I never saw Alive, the movie the first movie that came out about this and everything, and I don't know how it goes over the topic of people deciding that they're going to have to eat the dead to stay alive. But this one, I feel like it really just it hits you hard, because there's a lot of people who are like, I just want to survive, and you can totally see where they're coming from. And then there's the other group of people who are like, I'm not doing that. I'm not gonna do this. And you can totally see the absolute, like, you can totally see their side of it. And it's like, but do you realize if that they don't go through with it, they're not going to survive this situation and everything. This movie's a beautiful to watch. I know that it's got an awful subject matter, but it's a beautiful movie to watch. And this has really affected me. So what did you guys think?
Me too. That scene in the middle where they finally figure out how to get the radio working, only to hear the news broadcast saying they're giving up the search for them. And they all just are devastated. That almost broke me. I've said this before. I would die the first night if I was on this plane. I wouldn't even make it. The fact that any of them survived is astonishing and defies all logic. But yes, it is one of the most gorgeous looking films I've ever seen. And I think it is helped greatly by the fact that he hired a bunch of native speaking actors that Americans aren't going to be familiar with. That lended a lot of authenticity. This is one of my favorites of the year.
It's great. It's everything Alive should have been. It's, Alive is weird in that, like, Ethan Hawke plays one of these guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's not done with as much respect as this one is, and as much honesty. I think it's more produced to be a Hollywood movie. But yeah, this is astonishing stuff. Good stuff.
I've never felt the cold as much as I felt in this movie either, by the way. I don't know how they did it. A lot of times you see movies that are set out in the cold, like, what's the Gray or something like that. Yeah. And it's cold, but it doesn't feel like you're going to die cold or anything like that. This movie really does make you feel like any moment they're going to die because of how freaking cold it is. Yep. And every time they walk away from the plane, that's just like possibly a death sentence, because they're going to have to be out in the middle of all of this with no coverage whatsoever. I've never felt it as much as I felt it in this. It's kind of crazy, the trick that they pull on this one.
Yep. Yeah.
The next 4 on Jeremy's list I haven't seen, so I'm going to let Jeremy and Aaron go over all these. I'll introduce them, but Albert Brooks, Defending My Life.
Ooh, this is a great documentary. It's one of those documentaries that I kind of wish they would make more of, where in between all the clips of Albert Brooks's career, we cut back to Rob Reiner and him in a restaurant, just talking, just having conversations about his career. These two have known each other since, like, I think middle school. So he's the perfect person to be talking to Albert. Albert Brooks is one of my favorite actors ever, so that probably helps with my enjoyment here. Really quality documentary.
Yeah, worth watching just to see Albert Brooks tell these stories. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, I'd recommend it as well.
The next one is No One Will Save You.
Ooh, sneaky top 5, top 10 for Jeremy. I am a big Caitlin Dever fan, mostly because she's an awesome actress. And this does alien invasion unlike any movie I've ever seen. Within the first 5 minutes, there's an alien in her house coming after her. It's also unique in that she has no dialogue throughout the whole film. She's only acting with her face, her body, and some noises here and there. And then it ends in this unexpected, whimsical way that had me laughing. This is one of my favorite experiences front to back all year long. I just didn't know what to expect, and it was very fresh and original.
Definitely fresh and original, and I don't think I liked it quite as much as you did, mostly because I got distracted by the conceit and how forced it felt in a couple scenes. Like, there are a couple scenes where it's like, people would talk here. People would definitely open their mouth and say words here. But what it's doing is really interesting, and I love a big swing, and it's definitely a big swing, and I do love the ending. So, yeah, good stuff.
The Caine Mutiny Court Martial.
Ooh, it's just a really, really, really top-notch, well-acted courtroom drama. And you've probably seen stuff about the Caine Mutiny before. There are previous movies. This is based on a stage play. But the standout for me was Kiefer Sutherland. because he's doing something I've never seen him do acting wise. And I think he's embracing his age in this movie and acting through that. I just thought it was really strong.
It is. It's super strong. It's hard to make a movie like this that is just all courtroom. Like this is a courtroom film. It's not literally all courtroom. There are a couple moments there outside of the courtroom, but for the most part, this is just courtroom dialogue. And I think it's hard to make that work, but this movie does. And a lot of that is the performances and the situation and the way it gives you the information. This movie has a real understanding of what information you need when, and it dishes it out really well.
Leave the World Behind.
Okay, so this is weird. I'm not sure I would put this in my top 10, but this movie, I've been thinking about this movie since watching it more than a lot of the movies I saw this year. Just because it takes a unique approach to an apocalyptic event in that it never truly tells you what is happening to these people and to the earth. You don't really know. And it's really more interested in how various people and personality types and relationships might be tested or grow if you were in that moment yourself. I just thought it was a really fresh perspective on an apocalypse, unlike Armageddon, where we see all the destruction all over the world. We're just following these people right here in this thing. They don't know what's happening. They know it's probably big and bad. I was pretty riveted, and again, it has not left my brain, and I think that's worth noting.
Yeah, Sam Esmail's good, man. I really like the way he sees the world and the way he integrates his views on how technology is changing us and affecting us, and not just technology, but culture and pop culture, the good things about pop culture, the bad things about pop culture. I think the themes and message in this movie is really strong. I really, really like this movie a lot. I think it has a lot to say about how media is both a distraction when it shouldn't be, and also a healing, a healing thing when it can be. Like, it can be both things. It can both be a good escape and a bad escape, and that's a really interesting thing here.
Would the movie be better if the finale of Friends, the TV show, had been better, or is the movie better because that episode is kind of mediocre?
I did not give any thought to the quality of the finale of Friends playing into the way this movie finishes.
So she's binged Friends, for those of you who don't know. Very early on, when the power goes out and the cells go down, she can't Netflix anymore. She's only has the finale of Friends left. And all movie, she's mourning the fact that she's not going to get to see the final episode of Friends. And so, as somebody who watches Friends every single day, my first thought was, boy, she's going to be so disappointed.
I don't think that's what the movie is necessarily concerned with at the end, but
no.
But yeah, that is
her wanting to watch Friends is a key. I think it's a key part of what you're talking about.
Exactly. No, it is exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Okay, so now on to my list, and this list is not because, hey, like these are some movies that I really loved, and I need everybody to know about them or anything, but I felt like we should talk about them a little bit. I think one of the better horror movies of the year was Talk to Me. It's basically It Follows, but it's a movie that's I thought was very effective in its scares, and it was very effective in how it made the danger really the people who are playing the game more than the game itself that's in this movie and everything. What did you think of this, Aaron?
I love this movie, and if I'm going to love a horror movie, it's generally because it nails its metaphor, and I'm thinking about it on deeper levels, and this did. There was a moment early on where the way they tie the person to the chair is so specifically like somebody ties off before they shoot up with heroin or something. They do something with the rope that feels like they're tying off an arm. And from then on, I was locked into the substance abuse metaphor in this movie, and the idea that this, arm that can take you back to the dead is basically like, heavy illicit drugs that can have these impacts on you that, give you this euphoria but are dangerous. And that metaphor works through the entire thing up to the ending. And the ending, I think, is the only way this movie could have ended. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So yeah, I really like Talk to Me.
Somebody
I think it's really good.
warned me off this because of what they know about me. Is there something in this movie that might not be Jeremy's cup of tea that you can think of?
I mean, there's a real horrific death in it, but I don't know if.
Yeah, there's some horror. There's some horror elements that, in general, I don't think you would like love to see, but it's a pretty fantastic movie.
All right, I'll put it on the list.
Movie that is not going to be for most people, but I needed to bring this up is Skinamarink. This one basically takes the idea of let's make this a perspective of a child and take that nearly to it takes it to its most extreme in camera angles and everything. This movie doesn't want to show you a fucking thing. The angles are just like constantly like it's the ceiling and it's like what's going on in the edge of the frame. I don't know. We didn't shoot it that way. But I feel like this movie needs to be discussed. It is one of those type of movies that makes you wonder what exactly was the point of this. And I really do think it's what is trauma like for a child who doesn't understand everything and doesn't know how to put the pieces together and everything. In that way, it's very weirdly effective. But this movie is not entertainment, folks. It's not a movie that you're going to recommend to somebody because it's almost like somebody drunk got a camera and decided to just like, I'm just going to put it right here and press record. And then whatever happens. And then they just walk off for about 5 hours and then and they'll cut it down to like 30 minutes or something like that of movie.
It's abstract art. It's it's everybody can take something different from it. Although the artist probably had a story in mind, an idea of what was happening in this world, but it's just weirdness and it's like looking at abstract art and you go, okay, this is art, I guess, but I'm not, or maybe you lock into it and you're like, oh, this is amazing and here's why I like it because of what it does here or whatever. But it's not your typical narrative film, that's for sure. So if you do watch it, be ready to know you're in for something very, very different. And I would highly warn you off gummy before watching something like this.
Another movie I wasn't entirely a huge fan of, but I really enjoyed a performance in was Infinity Pool, and that's mainly because of Mia Goth, who has suddenly just who seemed like was going to be kind of an afterthought character actress for a really long time. And now is like a in-demand almost star and everything. Of course, there's some stuff coming out about her on the set of this last movie that she's on, kicking an extra and everything. I hope that's not true. But in Infinity Pool's not. I don't think it's a complete success as a movie, but it's Mia Goth is amazing in it. Do you have any thoughts on Infinity Pool, Aaron?
It's another very strange horror movie that's willing to be bold with its choices. I don't know that I fully locked into what Infinity Pool was saying. I think there's some stuff that's pretty easy to gauge, on the surface, about what it's saying. But yeah, by the end I was like, maybe I'm misunderstanding this movie. So I didn't fully lock into it.
Same here. And then, so then we had a movie that sort of took the internet by storm, like Snakes on a Plane did a few years ago. Although Snakes on the Plane really wasn't that big of a hit. Cocaine Bear sort of like got everybody's imaginations running. Like, oh, what would happen if you had a bear full of cocaine? And of course, the real story this is based on isn't nearly as exciting as this movie is. But this movie was very one joke for me, and I ultimately didn't like it all that much. But I felt like we needed to talk about it because it was a movie early on in the year that just like everybody was like wanting to go see, and this is going to be this is going to be fun at the movies again. But after about 30 minutes, you realize, oh, a lot of the jokes are going to be, oh, that bear's on cocaine, and that's that's the joke. So What did you think?
Yeah, same. I think this movie may have had some post-production issues. It feels really cut up to me. It feels like they changed some stuff in there. I laughed several times during this movie. There's a moment where somebody has gone through everything, and then when the ambulance drives away, they fall out the back or whatever. That whole comedy of errors part was really funny to me. But other than that,
that's a Simpsons joke.
yes, no, I know.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm not saying it's original. Just saying I laughed.
Okay.
But,
That's actually one of my favorite Simpsons gags ever.
yeah.
A movie that was recommended to me by a friend was Flora and Son, and I think the John Carney world of movies where you have Once and Begin Again and movies of that nature, they're really very nice comfort food, and this is no different. All conflicts don't weigh the movie down for 10 minutes while they sort it out. It's basically just like, oh, here's a conflict, and then by the next scene it's just like, oh, let's just say our sorries and move on. It just constantly wants to be a happy movie. I think there's a really good performance from Eve Hewson. All of his movies are basically about music and trying to express yourself in a way through music. And I really, really enjoyed Flora and Son. I don't think very many people saw it. What do you think of this?
I loved everything about this movie except Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I don't know I feel like he was miscast. I didn't buy him in the role. I didn't buy him in this world. Like the authenticity that everybody else, that I felt with everybody else in this movie, he just felt like he was this weird thing that didn't belong. That affected my ability to buy into the overall romance, those kind of things. I thought Jack Rayner was great, who I remember in Midsommar. And I think he's great here. You mentioned Eve Hewson, just absolutely amazing. Everybody's in this is great, but just JGL just kind of took me out of it. So
I agree with that. Also May December, which is a movie that I think may have gotten snubbed for Oscars. I'm not sure. I mean, Julianne Moore is great in this, and I think Natalie Portman's fine, and I really like Charles Melton in May December. May December is another one of those movies where it kind of, by the end of it, you're not quite sure what is truth and what's fake and everything like that. Like it's one of those things where Natalie Portman is this actress who's trying to learn her character for a movie, and this character just happens to be very abhorrent, seduced a 13-year-old kid who still acts 13 20 something years later, and it's so sad watching him and watching Charles Melton in this. What did you think of May December, Aaron? I get the feeling this was a mixed review movie.
Yeah, I didn't like it that much. I agree that the performances are good and interesting. I was distracted so much by the message of this movie being contradicted by making this movie. What it felt like what this movie was trying to say about the exploitation of this real life event, and like that it felt like it was getting away with it because it was meta. Like if we do it in a meta way where the Natalie Portman character is exploiting it by becoming this person or whatever, then we don't bear the responsibility of also exploiting this situation, in this way. And I just had a hard time getting through that. Add to that the fact that I didn't like the mixed tone in it. Some people really did, but there's I think the clip that a lot of people love is the hot dog clip, where she says, we're not going to have enough hot dogs. And then the overly
long take of her with the music crescendoing as she opens the refrigerators. I don't think there's going to be enough hot dogs.
So for they actually sent a thank you card of this movie with her opening the fridge, and I'm showing it now. And when you open it,
hot dogs on the grill.
And then there's a pause.
Yeah.
So they know the tone is out there, but then they also want the authentic tone as well. So it didn't work for me. It just didn't work.
Then a movie that probably should have done a lot more, should have done as well as the other Godzilla movies that have come out, is Godzilla -1.
Yes.
This movie's really, really, really good. It got it back to what the original Godzilla was about, which is thinking about Godzilla in terms of the social categories that it's bringing up in the movie. What did you think about Godzilla -1, Aaron?
It's amazing. It is what should work about the Godzilla movies done perfectly, which is that they are a commentary on something that Japan has dealt with, very, very specifically, after being nuked and the idea of nuclear war and things that happen in the war. It also takes a different aspect of that, which is kamikaze pilots and the idea of honor and value and worth. So it takes these real things and then it lets it be about the humans around the monster instead of just, oh, look at the big monster destroying things. Like we are connected to the actual human beings in this story, and that's what works about monster films for me. And this movie really, really works. Yeah.
Want to see bad? Want to see bad? No announcement yet on Blu-ray or streaming. Jeremy, mad.
Yeah, I really did think it brought it back to what it was, what these movies are supposed to be. And it's,
definitely.
If you want just wanton destruction, you're going to get it, but you also get the human side. I really like that. I really enjoyed Asteroid City. It's Wes Anderson's latest movie that came out, but quickly faded, and I guess most people didn't like it. But I really enjoyed it. I know that Wes Anderson is a brand at this point, and if you don't like that brand, then you're not going to like the movie that comes out. But I thought one of the funnier moments of the year was the alien that came down and was just like looking over his shoulder at the humans and like making sure that he was able to do this before he went back up in the spaceship. I thought that was a great moment in this. What do you think of Asteroid City?
I love how Wes Anderson lately is just embracing his desire to be like part magazine, part stage play, part movie, like all the ways that, like, French Dispatch was like this too, where it's like, yeah, it's a movie, but structurally and formatted, it's kind of a magazine, and then it's kind of a play here. And this movie goes all out on those levels, like on one level, this is a story that's being performed on stage. On another level, it's a movie. My favorite moment in the movie is when why is Barbie's name? Margot Robbie shows up on the balcony. Yeah. I love that scene. I love that conversation. There's a really sweet meta-ness to it. I really love Asteroid City. I think it's one of the best movies of the year. I think it's really good.
And then last on the list that I wanted to mention was Megan, which is another AI movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. I know that Aaron did not too much. But there's a scene in this that's another one of those that just a very quirky, funny part of it is when Megan starts singing Titanium in this movie, and it's just there's enough humor, and this is basically a comedy, even though it's a horror movie essentially. But I really enjoyed Megan. It was probably the first hit of 2023.
Yeah, I mean, this is just me being a killjoy. This is a fun movie. I totally understand why people love this movie. It's a little too ridiculous for me. My brain couldn't get into it. So yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start rapid firing a little bit here. We're already kind of doing that, but I do want to go over these as quickly as possible before we get to the 2-hour mark. Some movies that Aaron mentioned that he wanted to hear some opinions from us about. Sisu, which is that one-man wrecking crew old man movie. Oh my God, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. It sure is. Yeah, you picked the most famous sniper killer soldier from the most famous war ever, and you decided to pick on him, and now you and 50 of your friends are going to pay so dearly. I loved this movie.
Yeah. I didn't love it as much as you guys, but like I wanted to talk about it because it is one of those movies that it's like it's doing a very specific thing and it's doing it very, very well.
It is one of the all-time go on and shoot this guy already type movies.
Yes.
because they do just not do that. They could do it and just don't all the way through the movie. So it's one of those.
Well, and stuff like the hanging scene, it's so ridiculous and it's so funny.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Bottoms, which I thought was so uneven that I couldn't enjoy it 100%. I thought it was hilarious when it was trying to be hilarious, but when it was trying to add heart to all of the stuff, it didn't work for me. But what did you guys think of Bottoms?
I feel about the same way, actually. I think I liked more than I didn't, and I laughed a lot, but it tonally felt uneven to me for sure.
What's interesting is I don't remember much of the authentic. I remember it being pretty much straight Heathers, like where you're not supposed to buy into any of it, but it's just this kind of fun alternate reality kind of thing. But maybe it was there and I just missed it. I would have felt the same way. I would have been like, well, that feels a little off for how I've been experiencing this movie. But that experience, that Heathers type experience, I really, really loved. I thought there was a lot of really fun stuff.
And this movie is clearly not on planet Earth. There's so many things in here that just don't make any, they're not, obviously not real. Like, this is not a real anything, but I enjoyed it. I just thought it was a little too uneven for me. Then there's Plane, which I was expecting a completely different movie when I watched this.
Interesting.
You think you'd spend more time on the plane?
I did. I thought it was going to be all a big plane movie, and it was more the plane crashes and they're having to deal with people on an island and all that. And it's a pretty good action movie, I would say. It was fun. What do you think?
What's wild is that island is like, they fictionalized a lot of it, but that's real. There is a real island in that location that is basically lawless, where it's completely run by militants and gangs and whatnot. I thought that was fascinating. I mean, I wouldn't want to go there, but I thought that was interesting.
This is my movie of the year that's better than it has any right to be. This movie should be terrible, and it's not terrible. It's actually a fairly decent action movie. If you want to see the movie you were expecting, watch the TV show Hijack with Idris Elba. That's probably closer to what you were expecting Plane to be.
Yep. I was sitting there actually expecting to be like, oh, this person's probably secretly bad, and they're going to change alliances at the the halfway through.
I tell people Plane is City of God meets Flight of the Phoenix.
That's correct.
Yep, absolutely.
Biosphere, which has Sterling K. Brown and Mark Duplass. This is a very interesting movie.
Yes, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this.
So Mark Duplass used to be the president of the United States, and he's buddies. He's a lifelong friend of Sterling K. Brown, who was in a part of his administration. But they obviously have a great amount of differences about policies and stuff like that. And apparently something that Mark Duplass did as president led to this situation where he had to build a biosphere, and it's like the end of the world and everything like that. And the movie really starts hitting hard about, life finds a way and things like that. Like, what happens if you are raising fish to eat and then you have nothing but males in the water, and then one of the males turns into a female, and then Mark Duplass suddenly starts turning into a female in the movie, and there's a whole bunch of discussion about what is gender, what is sex, what is there's a lot of things going on in this movie. What did you think about here?
Oh, I'm so glad you watched it. This is the movie, like, I have nobody to talk to about. Nobody has seen this movie, and it's so interesting to me because of, like you said, the things that it's saying about gender and sexuality. And Sterling K. Brown has an incredible scene in this movie where he is confronting his homophobia that he didn't know he had. It's presented to him in such a practical way that he has to confront some things, and he is so good in this. I was hoping to see some attention for him in this, but of course he's in American Fiction as well, and he's going to get most of the attention for that.
How different that role is, though, in American Fiction. He had two roles this year that grappled with homosexuality from complete opposite ends, and he played them both great. I haven't seen
Oh yeah.
And yet they both deal with this same thing, which is especially male homosexuality in the Black community is a very big topic in the Black community. And in both of these movies, he kind of deals with it and faces it head on in two different ways. But yeah, really interesting stuff in Biosphere. I'm really glad you watched it.
Then there's The Blackening, which I thought was, again, this is another movie that I thought was funny for most part, and then not as funny as I was hoping it would be. Yeah, I was kind of hoping for a little bit more in The Blackening, but I felt kind of like I did with Bottoms, was like it was kind of funny, and then there were some parts that were just not so funny, and I was kind of wishing for more characters to be more in the spotlight than they did in this. But what did you think of The Blackening?
This has one of my favorite laugh moments of the entire year, and
oh yeah,
for all the comedy in this movie that is about race, this one has nothing to do with race. There's a bad guy stalking them early in the movie, and he shoots one of the characters with a crossbow and hits him. And they end up subduing that guy, and then they're bickering. They pull out the crossbow, and they start arguing, and that guy stands up again, and the crossbow guy shoots again, and the arrow goes right in the same fucking hole. And I had to pause the movie. I was laughing so hard. I liked it more than you did. I don't really remember. It's been long enough that I don't really remember well enough to like defend the tone, but I remember laughing a lot, and I remember that Rosa Parks joke that I will never forget.
Yeah, which is something that I believe was in Barbershop. Tim Story directed that too. Cedric the Entertainer. Cedric the Entertainer told a joke about Rosa Parks just sitting down, and that was all she did.
Interesting.
So that was something that I thought was interesting, sort of a kind of a callback to that.
It must have been. That's awesome.
I thought it was hilarious. It's a fun watch. Blackening is a fun watch for sure.
Okay. Well, then I'm the asshole. Then no. I'm kidding. Then Beau is Afraid, Ari Aster's third movie. Joaquin Phoenix, who's I think going to have a filmography that's just going to have the most insane characters by the time he's done acting and everything. This is another 3-hour long movie. The movie's title tells you almost everything you need to know, except that it's kind of crazy. It's kind of a crazy. There's a sex scene between he and Parker Posey in this that I thought was really hilarious. I kind of liked this movie. But I don't know. I may have to watch it again at some point when I finally carve up enough time to watch it. What do you think of Beau is Afraid?
I didn't like it as much as most people. I think in this movie, he is very much daring us to watch his movie. Like there's an element, even the way this movie ends, it just ends in a coliseum, and like the audience just starts to like wander out over the credits, and I think that's like a mirror to the audience in the theater, just kind of wandering out like, what did I just like I think he knows what he's doing here. I will say I have friends very close to me who deal with heavy anxiety, those kind of things, who love this, who thinks this movie captures that feeling and understands them in a way they've never seen a movie understand what they go through. And so I do think there's a place for me. It's just a lot of ridiculousness. It's interesting. Yeah. It's definitely interesting, but
there's definitely an exaggeration of how he sees the outside world. Like he lives in a neighborhood that is the most dangerous neighborhood ever created. But you get the sense that it's not exactly as dangerous as he's making it out. Like there's a dead body in the road for the entire time he's in that one. Nobody ever comes to pick the dead body up ever.
And I think those are visual representations of how it feels to project those things. Like, you know, the worries, the anxiety, those kind of things that the movie is trying to get at. You know, looking up in your bathtub and there's just a very scared man on the ceiling, you know, like just like that's clearly not real, but is it real?
Yeah. How to Blow Up a Pipeline is a very tense movie about a bunch of people who either you call them terrorists or heroes, depending on where you fall on that. But they're I like this. What I like about this movie the most is that these people are dedicated to what they're doing and they're not dumb. when they're going out. They actually have a set out plan for this, and everything's very tense, especially making of bombs and things like that.
Yeah, it's weirdly Ocean's 11 for like eco-terrorism in some ways. Like it puts the team together, you figure out what they're good at, and I think the movie handles it really well too. I never felt like the movie was preaching one way or the other about what these people were doing. I think it's a really tense, interesting movie worth watching.
Really is. Dix the musical I thought was too much. It was too much. This is a lot of raunch for the sake of raunch, getting into a movie and hoping that you laugh all along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was laughing a couple of times in this movie, but ultimately I didn't like it.
I totally agree, actually. This is another one where it's like, I can't believe they made this. And there are a couple songs that I think are hilarious. A couple of the songs and some of the lyrics in the songs really, really slay me. But overall, it's just an excuse for, genital humor.
Yeah. And then another movie that I believe had some Oscar snub talk was The Iron Claw. This wrestling movie, which really is a sort of a discussion on overbearing fathers and what they drive their children to do in the name of finding some sort of glory. And the guy who's in Fight Club, who's like, his name is, in Death They Have a Name, that guy, I can't remember the actor's name. He plays the father in this, and he's his 80s Texas father as you get. And he drives this is probably one of the saddest movies I've seen this year. And Jeremy, I would say if you're going to watch this, know that it's got every trigger known to man.
Okay. Good to know.
I would actually, Jeremy, if you ever decide you want to watch, I would just read the Wikipedia on it first and know what because it is based on a true. In fact, it is one of the saddest movies of the year, and they actually had to make it less sad. Like there's actually, if you don't know, this is a wrestling family where like everybody in the family died tragically in different ways. Like, the same family, they actually lessened the brothers by one. There was another tragic death in this family. The movie doesn't even go into. So yeah, Zac Efron changed himself for this movie. It's wild to see him in this, in that body. Like he has absolutely changed himself. So yeah, the Von Erich story is a very sad story, and I think this movie handles it pretty well. It's a well done film.
Yeah. Theater Camp I thought was very funny. I really enjoyed it. I love Molly Gordon. And she sort of like brightened up The Bear second season as well. She's really good. She's also a co-director on this with Nick Lieberman. But I really enjoyed Theater Camp quite a bit. And I'm going to unless you guys want to interject, I'm going to start really going through these.
Do it.
Dream Scenario I talked about on this podcast a few weeks ago. Nicolas Cage really good in this. A really good discussion about cancel culture and things of that nature that I think is not it goes in good faith on it. We talked over, there's a slew of biopics that came out this year, not Oppenheimer, that were all business related. Blackberry, Air, Flaming Hot, Dumb Money, and Tetris all came out this year. I've seen Blackberry and Air. Blackberry I think is the best one of this group. Glenn Howerton is fantastic in it. I love Glenn Howerton in this. Air was really good too, but a lot of times these movies depend on what you think about the product itself. A lot of times,
you saw the best two. Blackberry and Air are the ones worth watching. Flaming Hot's pretty good, but it's also one of those Wikipedias where you go, oh, that's like there's a lot of doubt on this.
Yep.
Dumb Money is interesting, but I didn't think was perfect. In Tetris, I didn't like much at all. So yeah, it's Blackberry and Air I think are the ones, and it's this weird new genre. This biz biopic, whatever thing that's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. A few other mentions. The Killer, which was David Fincher's entry into Netflix this year. I think the movie is great for 20 minutes at the beginning, and then it's okay for the rest of it. It was pretty good. Ferrari was Michael Mann. I didn't like this at all. Talking about biopics that just didn't sell me. This one certainly didn't. Knock at the Cabin, M. Night Shyamalan's movie, I thought was interesting for a bit, and then it just, I didn't ultimately like it all that
Yeah.
much at the end. Saltburn, which has become the sort of the whipping boy this year, I believe. I see stuff about Saltburn coming out a lot now towards the end of the year, or after the fact. And I enjoyed Saltburn, but the critics that have been talking about how it doesn't really have anything to say other than what it's doing in the movie. It doesn't have anything to say about society or the class, the upper class. They're absolutely correct about that. But I enjoyed Saltburn ultimately. It's not for everybody. And then Scream 6 came out. It's amazing that this franchise is still doing pretty well. I was not a big fan of Scream 6, and I wasn't a big fan of the reveal on this one. I think the series is tired. I know they're having trouble now because they've been firing actors for having the audacity to have opinions about Israel and Palestine.
Yep.
So I'm not a big fan, but it's amazing that series still goes on. And then Aaron, you had 5 we needed to see, and then we can talk about what our best movies of the year are.
Yeah. So this is, difficult because you guys saw a lot. Chris, you put in a lot of work, saw a lot of movies, and Jeremy, actually, you did too. You watched a lot of stuff. So, but these are ones neither of you have seen that I would highly recommend. I'll start with The Teacher's Lounge. This is a international film nominated for Best Picture. This is my favorite international film of the year, next to Society of the Snow. This is such an interesting story. I think you both would really, really like it. I'd get it on your list. Quiz Lady is one we didn't mention that I really, really, really liked. This is a comedy. It's the best I've seen Awkwafina in something ever. I think she's amazing in this. And Will Ferrell is perfect. And this is the kind of part I want Will Ferrell to play from here on out. I think he's really, really good in it as well. And it's really, really funny. So I'd put Quiz Lady on your list. Documentary-wise, still, a Michael J. Fox story is definitely worth checking out. I know most people are aware of his Parkinson's and his young diagnosis with that disease. And this documentary really goes into the details of how that impacted him, how they kept it secret, why they tried to keep it secret, those kind of things. I really found it good and fascinating. Sharper is one that just came and went, I think, on Hulu. It is a con man movie to end all con man movies. There's so many twists. That's either why you're going to love it or hate it. You're either going to love the fact that it just keeps twisting on you, or you're going to hate the fact that it just keeps twisting on you. Either way, I think it's one to get on the list because there's some interesting performances there and some good stuff. And then Guy Ritchie's The Covenant also kind of had a moment and then disappeared. This is a really great action film about war and specifically about this man escaping. So yeah, I would put that on the 5. So those would be the 5 I'd recommend that neither of you have seen. It may be getting on your list at some point.
All right. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check those out. All right. So now we're going to pick our best of the year. Jeremy, start us off. What is your top movie of the year?
This is one of those years that I really think you guys are going to maybe pick the same movie. And if you don't, my pick is going to make us go 7 rounds. I'm picking Poor Things. Oh, not Poor Things. Sorry, wrong P movie. Past Lives. I have a list over here, and I looked at the wrong one. Past Lives is the movie that I think you could maybe watch that movie and find it harmless. But that was not my experience. I found it very, very impactful to me and had me and my mind racing and thinking and playing it over again. So that's my pick for best of the year.
And by the way, chat, yeah, Napoleon, Ridley Scott. Okay. That was okay. That was an okay movie. Should have been way better than it was. I didn't like it that much. It was kind of funny, but it was whatever. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and say Oppenheimer is my favorite movie of the year. I think the balancing act to do that movie is incredible and was one of the better movie theater experiences of the year for me. So I'm going to go with Oppenheimer.
Mine has changed since I made my official list at the end of the year.
Wow.
The movie that has continued to grow onto me till it is now my favorite movie of the year is American Fiction. That is my number 1 of 2023 currently.
Okay.
So
Here comes the 7 rounds.
All right. So we're going to go another round. All right. Jeremy, what is yours?
Nimona.
Nimona's your second?
Mm-hmm.
All right. For me, it's Poor Things. Poor Things is my second.
I think we have a winner. My second is Oppenheimer. I think Oppenheimer, which was my number one at the end of the year, and American Fiction has jumped up ahead of it. But yeah, I think Oppenheimer.
See, the reason I was worried is that I liked Oppenheimer a great deal, but it was going to be 7 or 8 rounds before I voted for Oppenheimer. And I thought you were both going to vote that out the gate, so I was only half right. But
a lot of these movies I wouldn't have been opposed to either. I think American Fiction would have been my third. And then maybe Past Lives or something like that would have been my fourth. So, I mean, yeah. I would have. I like Nimona, but I probably wouldn't have put it anywhere near my top 5. But hey, if we had ended up picking Nimona, I would have been like, yeah, whatever.
Go Nimona.
You know,
would have been better than When Harry Met Sally.
It would have been. It would have been. Actually, that's the thing. I love When Harry Met Sally. It's not the best movie in 1989. Okay, that is going to do it on the main side of it, at least for Chris and Jeremy. Aaron is going to stay behind and talk about some movies we didn't get to.
Sure.
But anyway, thank you again, chat. You guys were hectic today. You guys were throwing all sorts of comments out there. I wish I could have gotten to some of them, but we had this, trying to pack in a whole bunch of movies into 2 hours is not easy. So, but we appreciate you for coming out. But that is going to do it for this episode. Oh, by the way, that's right. Next week's homework. I'm going to go back to the comedies of the decades, and I poured over some 90s comedies. This is such a tough decision. I wanted to do every one of these movies, but ended up going with Fear of a Black Hat from 1993. Awesome. This is Rusty Cundiff's mockumentary, very much like This Is Spinal Tap. There's some things that are straight up ripped off of it, but it's a very era specific movie, the early 90s. And I'm interested to see how our audience will react to this movie. Jeremy, Aaron, have you seen this before?
I saw it 4 years ago. You recommended it on Syncast one time, and I watched it after that. I can't wait to get back to it.
Right.
I had never heard of this movie in my life until you sent the email that it was next week. So this is perfect for me. I cannot wait. Okay. I didn't even know this movie existed.
Great. I feel like I'm taking kind of a risk with this movie because it's one of those that I know it's not very politically correct, and it's also early 90s, and you may need to have lived in that era a little bit to know a lot of the stuff that's going on in this movie. Anyway, that's next week's homework. And so now back to the spiel. Once again, thank you, chat. We will see you next week. And thank you very much. We'll see you next time. See ya.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Aaron, do I just close out of this window?
Yeah, just close out of your windows, and I'll stick around and chat with everybody. So see you guys.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Yeah. So here's how this is going to work. If there's anything that you watched in 2023 or a new movie in 2023 that you wanted to chat about, throw it in the chat, and I will do my best to have those conversations. And just kind of, I think Napoleon was mentioned at the end, which I also thought was a pretty big miss from Ridley Scott. I think there's some interesting things going on there. I think Joaquin is interesting there. But yeah, overall, I wasn't necessarily invested in it. All right, so let's start looking through this. If I've missed some that were up earlier, just put them in again. Let's see. Nick Jagged says, nope, that's not what I wanted to. Lolly says, All of Us Strangers, 2023 or 2024. That was 2023. All of Us Strangers was an interesting movie for me because I went into it like most movies for me, not knowing a lot about it, and just thought that it was a love story and didn't realize that it was about trauma and about the way that people in our lives impact us long term. I thought it was really, really beautiful. I thought the performances were really, really good. I think it's worth a watch. All of Us Strangers is really, really good. Let's see. Perfect Days. Jeffrey Michael Widman says, Perfect Days. I connected with that movie more than I thought I would. I connected to that movie less than I thought I would. It's one of those movies, if you don't know what Perfect Days is, it basically just follows the life of someone who cleans toilets in Japan. Did I get that right? Am I thinking of the right movie? This is a little more art than story for me. I think this could appeal to you if you enjoy movies that are a little more abstract and a little more experiential than narrative. So not that there aren't a few narrative things going on, if it's the movie I'm thinking of. But yeah, this one didn't quite hit me, but I understand why it's hitting other people. Slab says, how did the 23 movies compare to the past couple of years? Listen, I'm too much of a movie optimist. I feel like every year has so many great movies. I would say overall this movie year is really, really good. I look at my number 41 movie of the year is Biosphere. That's a really good movie. So if there are 41 movies that I think are really good movies, it's a good year. So I think overall it's been a pretty good year. Let's see. Zone of Interest, Jetsmets we talked about on the show. 65 Castriff says, 65 is a pretty big miss for me. I think some of the choices that were made in that movie create a very difficult level of a very big level of difficulty for the movie to be tense or exciting, because the main characters can't really communicate very well, and they are both very morose. So it's not a good hang. And the ideas that it's dealing with and the world building that it's doing aren't actually that interesting to me either. I didn't really like 65 that much. Polite Society, you also mentioned, was another one a lot of people liked that it just didn't work for me. I thought it was a bit too pedantic. Like it felt like it was really on the nose with a lot of what it was trying to do and say. But again, I get why people enjoyed it. Let's see. Oversoul says, I think I said Saw X and Self-Reliance. You already discussed Talk to Me, which I'm thrilled you enjoyed. I did not get around to seeing those. So is Self-Reliance? I thought Self-Reliance was 2024. I could be wrong about that. Saw X was definitely 2023. I feel like I need to see more of the Saw movies in the correct order, so I just didn't watch it. There were a couple horror movies this year, and I'm not a horror fan to begin with. There were a couple of horror movies this year that I didn't get to because I hadn't seen a lot of the ones before. Like there was a new Nun movie. I haven't seen the original Nun movie. I'm just not good at keeping up with the horror films. Nick Jaggis says, have you seen Please Don't Destroy the Treasure of Foggy Mountain? I feel like this is a dumb movie everyone will enjoy. I agree, Nick. And that was 2023, if I remember correctly. So I like Please Don't Destroy. Their sense of humor really works with me. I think Conan O'Brien is really interesting in this movie. And it's just, you're right, it's just one of those dumb fun movies that if you're on the right wavelength, I think you're going to have a good time. So yeah, I'd recommend Please Don't Destroy's Treasure of Foggy Mountain. I thought that was good. Shaggy Nut says 80 for Brady and the Outlaws were terrible. Good to know because I didn't see either of them. I missed those two. Renfield. Castriff mentions Renfield. Yeah, that's one worth bringing up. I don't think I liked it as much as others did, but it is definitely a fun Nicolas Cage performance and a fun movie overall. There's a lot of fun stuff it's doing. I just had a hard time like really feeling anything about it. It was just, I laughed a couple times. So Renfield's good. Confirmation that I was thinking of the right public toilet cleaner movie. One of my favorite moments in Better Days when he's trying to figure out the toilet that is see-through. That's a public toilet that's completely see-through walls, and then when you lock the door, it fogs all the walls up. And that scene was probably my favorite in the movie, where he's trying to figure that out. Let's see if somebody else talking about Renfield. Boys Who Kills. Nope, I don't remember that one. Let's see. John Mulaney, Baby J. Yeah, we didn't talk about any stand-up specials, anything like that. And those are often some of my favorite experiences. And the Baby J one's really good. John Mulaney is really funny in that. So definitely worth mentioning. Tatsu Kage Maru. Well, I don't know. I tried my best. You talked about it some, but I'd like to hear more about the blackening, please. Okay. I have critics trips that I go on, as mentioned, and it is probably the most exposed I am to a bigger variety of views on movies and a more diverse opinion. Many of my critic friends are people of color, whereas where I live is so white bread that I don't have a lot of people of color that I interact with on a day-to-day basis. So it was really interesting to get to talk to my black friends in the critics groups about this movie, because I was talking to them about how so much of the comedy of this movie is racially based, that for somebody who deals with trying to be as sensitive as possible and understand my privilege and, you know, see things from a different perspective, that it's fun for a movie like this to give us permission to laugh the correct way about race. And I said to them, there were some times during the movies where I didn't know if I was allowed to think it was funny, which is an interesting experience. And they, you know, assured me that it's okay that things can be funny and about race, and it, you know, that it's not the same as making light of the truth and the authenticity of the continued terrible race relations in the United States of America. Like, those two things can be separate things that you can experience, and that was really helpful for me. You know, not that I need permission to think something is funny. If you think something is funny, it's funny, but that there's a level of overthinking that I can tend to do that kind of keeps me in a different mindset sometimes, and that's okay too. So yeah, that was a really interesting conversation with them, and overall, that is the kind of movie the blackening in is definitely from a black perspective, making fun of racial issues within the black community and the idea of how black is, you know, I mean, just the simple concept of the movie being the black person, you know, in horror movies historically has always been killed first. And the poster says, okay, so who dies first when we're all black? And so then the idea of who's the most black and what does that mean, and the racial stereotypes that goes into. It's a really funny movie. It's really, really good. The Machine. Didn't see The Machine, so I can't talk about that one. Let's see. We didn't mention TMNT. That was a really fun movie. I don't know that I have much to say beyond that. I had a good time with it. It was fun. Lolly says, anyone else stunned by how Aaron can keep this many movies in his head? It's just a disease, Lolly. It's just a sickness. I am ill, and that illness is filmitis. And I love movies. And some of the consequences of this disease is that I don't remember anything from 5 years ago, because it's all movies from 2023 right now that I've stored in my head. So you throw out a movie, you know, from 5 years ago, and I go, oh yeah, that movie existed. Let me look at Letterboxd and see what I thought of that, because I can't store it in my memory anymore. Let's see. Slab, I almost had this on the list. Slab says, I can't believe nobody mentioned T-Swizzle's Eras Tour. I loved the Eras Tour documentary, which is more of just a concert film than a documentary. I have so much respect for Taylor Swift. I think she's an incredible artist. And I've never been to one of her concerts, but now I feel like I understand what that experience is like. And that's the beauty of that movie. More talk about Treasure of Foggy Mountain. Let's see. They cloned Tyrone. Yeah, another really, really good one that has some interesting things to say about race. Definitely on the quirky side, the weird side, but one that's definitely worth a watch. They cloned Tyrone is really, really good. Haunting in Venice. Yeah, we didn't mention Haunting in Venice. The new Kenneth Branagh, Agatha Christie. I think it's not quite as good as his Orient. But definitely better than Death on the Nile. Much, much better than Death on the Nile. I love the atmosphere in this movie. I think this movie is doing some really interesting things with science versus spirits, and the way that it handles it is really, really interesting. I love the character work in this. I thought Death on the Nile was a complete miss, but the other two I've really, really enjoyed. Let's see. Quiz Lady, I mentioned towards the end. Shaggy Nuts mentioned Quiz Lady. Emperor of Light, I don't remember. That feels like it might have been before. Let's continue. Can't believe they skipped the Meg 2. You know, the reason a lot of those kind of movies get skipped, Lolly, is because what are we going to say? Like, what would we say about some of these movies that would be different or interesting or meaningful? And so a lot of the movies we include, some of them are yes, because we have to talk about Super Mario Brothers because it absolutely blew up. And also I think we had some things to say about it. But like with Meg 2, yeah, big shark movie, terrible film, but if you want to see big sharks, see big sharks. Like there's not a lot with movies like that, you know, that we can really get into. But here I am talking about it, and there's parts of those kind of movies that I enjoy, but Meg was definitely better than Meg 2. Meg 2 was a big fall off for me. Castor says Extraction 2, another one we didn't talk about. Not as good as the original Extraction, in my opinion. Yes, there's some showcases like the original Extraction had, but I felt like the original Extraction had showcases plus some more interesting things that it was doing. And this was just the showcases, and the rest of it didn't really make a lot of sense to me. So I didn't come away from Extraction 2 super excited. Let's see. Slab says, Dicer remembers all these movies, forgets my birthday every year. I apologize, Slab. Happy birthday from here until eternity. It doesn't even matter what day it's on. Have happy birthdays. And That's Not My Name says in 5 years, Aaron is going to forget who Jeremy and Chris are. That would be scary. I do not believe that is correct. All right, let's see. I think that's... Oh, yeah. Castor says we can talk about Ferrari, maybe. That movie is bad in fascinating ways. Yeah, it was mentioned. It just doesn't work, does it? I mean, there's some spectacular... The crash in Ferrari is traumatic. Like, it's wild what Ridley decided to do with that crash. But I didn't think the performances worked. I didn't think the story made a lot of sense. Ferrari was a real miss. So yeah, we can definitely talk about that. Let's see. And that's it. That's all I see. I'll give you a couple more minutes to throw something in there if there's anything else you want to talk about. You hit a lot of the ones I thought maybe people would want to talk about. You know, there's somebody mentioning When Evil Lurks. I didn't see When Evil Lurks. As far as movies I loved that we didn't talk about, I think the first one on my list that we didn't talk about that I loved is probably Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which is definitely worth checking out. Really great performances in that, and a really sweet movie. Somebody I Used to Know is another one under the radar that I found really fascinating and interesting that we didn't talk about, that was on my favorites of the year. The Burial is a courtroom movie with Jamie Foxx and Tommy Lee Jones that I thought was better than it should have been. You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah is another one that I surprisingly really, really enjoyed. And that's kind of the list of ones that I really, really love that we didn't talk about. All right, guys. Well, thank you for the. Oh, Shaggy Nuts has one more. Migration was cute. Yes, Migration was cute. If I could shake the fact that it's derivative of every single other computer-generated animated movie ever, especially Finding Nemo. Very, very much Finding Nemo. But Migration was cute. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for hanging out for a little bit extra and chat movies of 2023. It is one of my favorite times of the year when we get a chance to do this. So have a good one. See you guys later. Bye.